Okay, so welcome again to session 2 of the Sectional Chair Academy this year, Emergency Preparedness COVID-19 edition. There we go, there's my things. Aha. All right, so the first thing we're going to talk about is managing campus restrictions. As you go forward with COVID, but also with any kind of event or emergency that might change the parameters of how your students are able to operate on campus. This is just some important things to think about. Specifically with COVID and looking at meetings and events, you have to think about physical distancing, face coverings, room capacities. Are the students being allowed to meet on campus? Some of you may be, you may have students on campuses where everything's like normal and everybody's going to meetings, but even if they are going to meetings, chances are there's some kind of regulation about how much distance they're able to have between each student. And if that's the case, then there are definitely set room capacities. So if you have a chapter of 50 students and they're now meeting in a room that says they can only have 20 people in there at a time, what else are they going to do? Also face coverings. If the university says that they need to wear face coverings at all times if they're on campus, then, if you're in on a meeting or you're in on an exec meeting, or if you're able to go visit on campus, help them make sure that they're following the university's regulations and those risk management policies. Scheduling, maybe the campus has instituted different schedules that students can utilize, different rooms and buildings on campus. Maybe this organization can only use it at this time and this organization can only use it at this time. So just keeping those things in mind and trying to help the chapters navigate these situations. This is frustrating for everybody. This is the first time for a lot of us having to deal with anything like this. So, just being there for the students and being just being a good listening ear, but also helping them follow the regulations of their campus. So one thing to make sure that—
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but your volume keeps going in and out.
Okay.
I don't know if your microphone's kind of funny or maybe
I don't know. I will try to talk louder. Does that help?
Okay. It just seems like it's like your volume's normal and then it's like you back away from the microphone or something. I don't know.
All right. I'll try to stay in close.
From last time.
What's that?
Last time they had to adjust the mic setting.
I did go ahead and turn it all the way up. Let's see.
I think there's a automatically adjust microphone or something option.
Let's see. Stop sharing that for a second. Audio. I've got it on automatically adjust, so. All right, well, I will try to stay in close, but do let me know if you have any further issues. All right, let's get back to our screen. Okay. Hello. Okay. So one thing as a section chair that you will want to do is check with all of the student organization offices on the campuses that you serve, and make sure if or check if there are any new regulations or restrictions that they have for your chapters or other student organizations. Also, do take note of their office hours. Some offices might be on restricted hours right now, just due to not wanting to have so many people in the building at one time. So if they are on restricted hours, do make sure that, yes, thank you, thank you for that note. Do make sure that you take note of those office hours so that if you do need to get a hold of somebody, you know when you can actually get a hold of someone. Something else to take note of, and we'll talk about this a little bit more when we get into recruitment, but in looking at what the university regulations might be regarding recruitment tabling or fairs, organization fairs, fundraisers, those kinds of things, you know, the universities may have new regulations regarding those, and you need to be aware of those for all of the campuses that you're involved with, and then also to help the students follow those regulations as well. Any restrictions that they might have for visitors on campus will obviously affect you unless you're already a student or faculty or staff member at that university. So if you are planning to visit a university, you should make sure first that you're allowed on campus. But also this might go true for community or scouting advisors as well. If the university says, well, the students can come on campus, but visitors can't, then you need to make sure that the students are providing all of the advisors a way to stay in touch with the chapter as well, and make sure that they're able to attend the meetings virtually. And then of course, any travel restrictions. We now know that national office has said that there will be no sectional, regional, or national conferencing, you know, for the time being. But the chapters may still be doing some traveling for different events and projects if that's allowed through the university. So make sure that your chapters are following any restrictions or regulations that the university might have for that. Okay, so this is just kind of something to think about as we go through the rest of this presentation. And if at any point, if anybody has an epiphany about something or has a suggestion or even a question, go ahead and feel free to chime in. But let's think about how can we as section chairs best support the students during challenging times or post-emergency situations. And again, this goes for COVID-19 as well as any other emergency you know, situation that you might come across. Let's see, that was Russ down in Louisiana and Mississippi. I have a feeling, you know, some of these things might come in handy for you. Anybody that's in California, if you're dealing with students that might be displaced by the wildfires. I mean, there's, you know, a lot of different situations that some of this could come in handy. Okay. So working with administrators. Part of what you have to do as a section chair is work with the campus administrators for those universities. Number one, check the university websites. I think I typed into Google search university COVID regulations, and immediately like 100 things came up, different universities. They're on top of this for the most part. Whether or not they feel like they're on top of this, they have issued some kind of regulation, some kind of statement about how they want operations to work on their university campus. So make sure you check the websites for the universities that you work with for those chapters, and make sure that you're aware of any regulations they have, but also that you can then discuss those with the students as you need to. Something good to do if, just in case of any emergency, when you become section chair, go ahead and in your phone, put the chapter advisory chair for all of your chapters into your phone. Also get an email address or phone number, some kind of contact information for a contact at the student affairs or student organization office in case of emergency. Hopefully just in a situation where you're needing to check on your students, but then of course, in the event that something is wrong, then you can get a hold of them if you need to. And then of course, staying up to date on any operational changes. You know, this situation is going to evolve. Right now, a lot of things are being done virtually. But as things change with the pandemic, hopefully, fingers crossed, as we find a vaccine and that starts to be released, the regulations and the restrictions are going to change. So as that happens, make sure that you check the chapter websites, check with your students, and make sure you stay on top of those operational changes. Okay, so getting into emergency preparedness, and like I said, a lot of this is applicable to other situations, not just COVID. We'll mostly be talking about COVID, but if you have any other situations or questions or concerns, things you've come up with in the past, things you're worried about happening in the future, do feel free to bring those up. Okay, so planning for the unexpected. How can we put emergency plans in place at the sectional level? hear from some of
Martha,
these.
your voice is going again.
Again? Okay. How about now?
Better.
Better? Okay. So I want to hear from some of the section chairs who have been doing this for a while. What are some things that you have done in the past or that you're doing currently to kind of plan for the unexpected? What are some things that you feel like you've consciously done to try to plan for unexpected events or emergencies with your chapters?
All right, this is Laura. I would say making sure you have a good working relation with the advisors, especially the advisor chair. So if there's something happens, you know who to talk to, who's the faculty person, who's the staff person, etc. And you're always communicating so that you can handle the unexpected.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely being in touch with the, your advisory board, especially the advisory chair. So that kind of goes along with creating a communication channel. So I mentioned earlier about having a contact information for someone in student affairs or student organization office. You should also have that information for a chapter advisory chair, maybe the other advisors as well, depending on how many there are. And keeping those communications open, touching base throughout the year, make sure they don't forget who you are. So if something does happen and you're trying to get a hold of them, they say, oh, I don't know who that is. I'm not going to answer that. You don't want that to happen. So. Okay, anything else that anybody else has done? Oh, Andrea, haha.
Okay, I was gonna say, I heard someone else talking. In addition to, building those good relationships with the advisors and things like that, I found it to be increasingly helpful to spend a lot of time building those relationships with the e-board, especially the president, or other, high-level vice presidents or people in addition, not just the president, but kind of the people that may be in line for the next year's e-board as well. Because then when there is an issue, they weren't scared to come to me or anything. I had more time to build those relationships I advised the chapter at Northwestern, and, as soon as we had an issue with some miscommunication, the student didn't hesitate to call me, text me, and say, oh my gosh, I need your help. What do I do about this? And so having not just their trust, but letting them know that, yeah, we want them to use their advisors and their campus, but letting them know that you're there first to be a resource and to help them, that it'll really help them be open and honest with you when stuff is going on. Also, I may be outdated this year, but last year I started, I think it was GroupMe, like a GroupMe chat groups for like the presidents, the treasurers, all e-board. So that way if like I needed to get a message out or something, or like remind the treasurers that, dues were due, I could just send them a quick something. It also helped them connect with each other, which was really nice.
That's a good idea.
But I don't know if GroupMe's cool anymore.
My chapter still uses it, but I don't know if that's a good indicator. I don't know. I don't know these things.
Region N uses it to kind of connect all different chapter officers that have kind of requested it. So across the board, people can contact. I personally hate it, but I'll roll with it because they're responsive on it. That's all that matters. It's like I'm rolling with whatever communication you're going to answer to. I will figure it out from there, whether it's my personal favorite or not. But yeah, having all of those kind of avenues of communication are really important. And I agree kind of with what Andrea's saying, having multiple points of contact within the e-board so that it's not just the president that you're reaching out to and other people know who you are, because there have been plenty of transitions that have occurred where even if not everyone on the e-board changed, if the president changed, nobody else knew who was leadership above that to deal with anything. So definitely having that presence. And I think I think communication is definitely like a key now, just because we're on a virtual platform where it's more important than ever to make sure that you're actually being responsive and keeping people updated with what's going on campus, since we don't really have that luxury of, oh, I'll just pop into a chapter meeting for those that are within reasonable proximity to just pop in.
No, that's good. Jack, you brought up a good point, is making sure that the method of contact you're using is actually the method of contact that the students are going to respond to. So if all you're doing is, let's say you're using Messenger and none of them are checking Messenger, then that's kind of pointless. So definitely finding out what it is that they're using and that they're wanting to use on a regular basis so that they'll check those or have those notifications turned on. That's good.
Following that, as something I continued with section chair as I had done as a VP service, and just in general, really, I'll track you through which sounds creepier than it should be, but I'll track you through a couple of different social medias or whatever platforms until I figure out which one works best for you. So if you're not responding to email in a reasonable amount of time, or you don't respond to text, if we have to work with Facebook Messenger, that's what works. If we're going to work with text and that's what works best for you, okay. I've recently started getting chapters to work with Google Hangouts, which has been the nicest one, but it just depends on which one. But yeah, I've heard both good and really bad things about GroupMe. My home chapter used it a bunch.
Fun fact, I had a student president last year who never checked her email. Not like, oh, this is inconvenient. Like, she told me, she's like, I don't think I checked my email. She was a junior. She's like, I don't think I checked my email until, like, maybe once this year. It's like, how does that function as a student? But yeah.
That was my thought.
My mind was blown.
One main thing, don't forget to make sure they have your contact information. We want theirs, but they need to have all your contact information. If you have more than one email, make sure they know it in case something happens unexpectedly, that they know they can call you at any time. Because things could happen at 2 o'clock in the morning, unfortunately.
Yes, they do.
Yes, we know that. So, if they have, like, I give out my work email because I'm on the internet during the day. If something happens, you don't have to just call me or text me or email me on my APO account. You can also do my work account if it's an absolute emergency. I want them to know I'm there.
Okay. So a lot of good discussion about creating that communication channel so that you know how to get a hold of the students and they know how to get a hold of you. Also, when planning for the unexpected or emergency situations, whatever happens, whether it's the campus shutting down due to COVID or due to some kind of natural disaster, go ahead and consider alternative chapter operational formats. We'll talk about some more of these specifically here in a little bit, but just like the regional Zoom accounts that are available, some universities may be offering some different platforms available so that the chapters can communicate and have their operations done virtually. But go ahead and kind of have those in the back of your mind, or maybe even have some plans set out so that if something happens, you can help facilitate that transition to an alternative format for the students. And then also planning for everyone's safety. So not only having contacts at the university for student affairs office or student organization office, but also for their public safety or campus police office. We don't like to think about the horrible things that can happen to any of our chapter members, but unfortunately, sometimes they do happen. And it's good to know exactly who you need to talk to on campus, whether to get information or to help in any way that you can. Okay, so now we'll go ahead and talk about some of those virtual resources. And some of these I didn't even know about. This is awesome. If we'd had some of this when I was a brother. So, available now. Some of these are available through the national website, and some of these are available on the APO mobile app, which we'll talk some more about here in a minute. but available now, there is the chapter continuity guide, chapter officer guides, the roadmap for virtual chapters, the virtual chapter meetings video, virtual leadership program guide, virtual fellowship program guide, and virtual service program guide.
Okay.
Well,
Okay.
I know there's some other stuff.
We had leadership series when I was a undergrad.
We had, yes, we had the leadership series. I remember it was like an actual packet. It was a
Yes.
packet of paper. Yes.
Okay.
Oh, yes.
I still have
Oh,
mine. I
yes.
still have mine from VP of Service. Yep.
I still have mine somewhere around here because I should say this is not my first time around being a section chair. I did this in the 90s, so you know, I've got stuff from that time frame. I'm a pack rat.
I think I got rid of mine a long time ago.
I don't think I have yet. Might have.
But those are some of the things that are available now. Coming soon, there's more things coming down the pipeline. There's a virtual recruitment toolkit. We'll talk about some more about that when we get into recruitment. The Pledge Educator Training Series, chapter officer training videos. I mean, they've got everything. Advisor training videos, modifying chapter requirements guide, and of course the upcoming National Service Week guide.
Are these resources, I know you said that they're between the website and the app.
Mm-hmm.
Can you also find them all on Officer Portal? Because I know that's where I go when I'm looking for documents.
Some of
Looks
them
that way.
are, but a lot of them are just on apo.org. Brittany, do you happen to know the answer to that one?
What's the question, Martha?
Just more specifically, what is where as far as those virtual resources between the, the virtual program guides and the chapter officer guides, what's available on the national website versus Officer Portal versus the mobile app?
So my go-to for looking for any of these new virtual resources would be the national website, apo.org. I think even on their header, when you go to their homepage, it has a link to the virtual resources that they've set up. The easiest way, though, if you're looking for videos, the guides, if you haven't downloaded the app already, if you utilize that, it has a direct link to that virtual resources tab, and it also has a direct link to the video library. So if you're looking for the recorded version of this, that will be linked there in the future. So if you haven't used that app yet, that's definitely the easiest way. And yeah, right here, as you see on Martha's screen, if you can look towards the middle bottom, there's a virtual resources tab and then the video library in the bottom left. Those will take you directly to those pages on the national website.
I'm in OP right now in the library.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not necessarily seeing them under manuals and guides.
Oh, I'm assuming OP has probably not been updated with all of these newer things, so I would go more towards the national website.
That was just one of the questions, was are they available in OP? So I figured I'd just look.
Yeah, the OP does have the virtual ceremonies templates, so that's the one trick to finding those.
All of them.
All right, thank you, Brittany, because I mean, all of this was new to me. I think it's great that they've got all of these resources now. I just don't even know about them. So
yeah, and I've seen a few regions too. We've copied them over to region websites just so it's a little easier. So if you do have a region that's doing that, that might be an easier route for you as well if you don't utilize the app.
Quick question. Are we permitted to use that stuff? Like if we do, say, a virtual conference, are we allowed to access this material for virtual conference?
as long as it's an APO conference, I don't see why not.
Okay.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's APO. I mean, there are still gonna be some section virtual conferences coming up in the fall because they didn't happen earlier.
Well, I was thinking about before COVID came out, I had thought, oh, we'll do like a membership conference or something. And now that we can't do that, a lot of this stuff seems like I'm kind of thinking why remake the wheel when I can just use some of this information to do that?
Right. It's always a good idea to use what we have, and then when someone asks, where'd you get that information from, you can refer them back to the website and say, hey, it's APO. There's all sorts of stuff out there.
Yeah, I would think anytime you use it, I think that's probably even welcomed by the national office. Just make sure you know, give them the credit, but also give the students information about where they can go to find that information. Okay. All right, so let's talk about creating a plan for virtual chapter operations. So in looking at chapter meetings, exec meetings, all the different kinds of meetings, you have to ask, you know, talk to the university and ask, is the chapter able to host in-person meetings for the fall? Some campuses are saying yes, some are saying no. Again, some of the things we talked about earlier, you have to look at room capacities. Can you fit all of the students in the chapter in that room? If not, you need to find somewhere else to meet, or maybe some people will need to go virtually or whatever you need to do. Distancing requirements. If you are maybe thinking about meeting outside and that's permitted, are they still only able to meet so far apart or in so large of a group? So keeping all of these things in mind. Do I hear a puppy? All right, and then also remembering if, find out if visitors are permitted. If the chapter cannot have visitors on campus, then unless you're already, like I said, a student, faculty, or staff member on that campus, then you will not be visiting them this semester. So find another way to stay in contact with them and stay on top of, you know, what their chapter activities are and what you can do to help them. And then also making sure that their advisors have access to what the chapter is doing as well.
One thing you may want to do is send an email out to them and asking some of that questions, and you're sending it to all your chapters at the same time so they can share the information with everybody, or you can get the information back and then share it out to everybody so they all know who's doing virtual meetings, when they're meeting, etc. And so with the advisors, so you can kind of plan a schedule when I'm going to be zooming in with this chapter tonight, but I'm available later in the week for this chapter who's having a meeting or having a section, a service project or something. Let everybody know, communicate with everybody.
I know what I've been doing is I sent out my first email for the semesters, basically told the chapters, look, I'm not going to come on your campus at all. Most of our campuses are virtual anyway at this point. You know, I'm going to, you know, I'm not, my visits are going to be virtual unless there's a specific reason I need to come to your campus. That way, that just takes it, for me, I don't have to worry about navigating all of this, but two, I think it keeps my message consistent with regards to, you know, health and safety of not only myself, but all of our brothers and their fellow students on their campus and the faculty and staff on that campus as well. Because I'm not, like, I don't work for one of the schools. So, you know, so I just don't want to put myself into their community, you know, God forbid I'm infected or, you know, what have you. So just keeping myself out of it, I think, is the best thing for me. And then I told all my chapters that, and I intend to do exactly what Laura said, try to let all the chapters know when they're going to have their virtual meetings. I'm encouraging the chapters as I talk to the presidents to, visit each other's meetings, because this is now the time to do that. I think interchapter relations is going to be easy because we don't have that distance factor at this point.
Yeah. And basically just let your chapters know that, I mean, you're in the same boat as they are. You're dealing with COVID-19, whether you're through your workplace or your home life or whatever. So you want to make that personal connection. You make a better section chair when you can be their brother, be their friend, not just oh my God, it's a section chair, which happened the first time I was a section chair. Somebody was in a blind panic that they were in trouble. And I'm like, I just wanted you to put a name and face together. So if you have any questions or comments, I'm not a stranger. And that's what we want to make sure, that we're not strangers. We're here. We're here to help you. We're in the same situation. we can understand and we can relate to you on any level, if possible.
Yeah, I wanted to go back in the chat. I think I missed a couple of comments earlier when we were talking about maintaining, communication lines with the chapters. If your chapters utilize chapter liaisons or section representatives or something like that, those are another perfect example of someone that you should, keep that line of communication open with, find their best contact information and method of contact for them, and stay in touch with them. And then someone else, let's see, Brittany did say, we were talking about all the different virtual resources that are available now. Feel free to spread the resources and share with the students, volunteers, etc. And feel free to include them in your workshops, webinars, trainings, virtual conferencing, and all of that. All right. So if your chapters are moving to virtual meetings instead of in-person meetings, there are the regional Zoom accounts that are available. For anyone whose chapters are already meeting and are meeting virtually, are they all using the regional Zoom accounts, or are they using something else or something that's been provided by the university?
I think a lot of them are using something provided by the universities.
I think most of the chapters, their schools are providing them with Zoom accounts, so they're just using those. I don't think I've ever gotten a request to use the regional Zoom account.
Most
had
of the
requests.
chapters use the region account. That was actually like a discussion point earlier of how we manage, because literally every chapter in our region wants to use it for their meetings.
I had chapters ask to use it last semester, but that's when everything was just in panic mode. My guess is now universities are a little more organized now that they're expecting students to be virtual for at least some, if not all, of their classes. The one trick with the region Zoom account is that only obviously one person can be using it at a time. So you gotta think ahead. Also, it really helps if you have chapters that have late night meetings and you have a region chair that goes to bed at 8 o'clock at night, that somebody else has access to the Zoom account. Not that we learned that the hard way.
Good note, good note.
Of course not.
No, my region chair goes to bed very early, and my chapters have meetings at 9:30 at night.
Okay, I'm not an early bird, but I'm not an alley bird either. I still got to be at work at 6:30 in the morning, so I got to get some sleep.
But yeah, we had a situation or two.
I've had a few chapters say they're going to use Google Hangout if they can't use Zoom. So they're looking at other options.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I intend to use when I do like section events, is the Google Hangout, since it's free and I don't have to worry about bothering with trying to figure out who has the region account or what have you.
Okay. Well, if any of your chapters, are having trouble, if their universities aren't already providing something for them, you can offer the regional Zoom account as an option. So in looking at chapter and executive meetings for this year, try to help the chapters keep their operations as similar to how they've done them in the past as possible. Obviously, we realize it's not going to look exactly the same, but if they were having weekly meetings before, try to keep weekly meetings now. It gives them a chance to touch base with each other and have that, at least that fellowship time. Even if they're not doing as many events as before, it's probably still good just for the friendship aspect of it, to maintain those current trends. And don't be afraid to be flexible and creative when coming up with solutions. Okay, so as far as the LFS programs for the chapters go, like we said a little while ago, there are guides for creating virtual leadership, friendship, and service events that are available on the APO website. And they offer many new opportunities that can accommodate different schedules, different locations, and other different, restrictions that the chapters might have to navigate. So definitely direct them to those resources on the national website. If requirements for a chapter are reduced, try to help the chapter aim to host at least a few events each semester to keep the members engaged. So even if they're looking at, well, it's just going to be virtual and we can't do anything on campus and we can't do anything in person, at least try to get them to do a few, bigger events to keep the brothers engaged and keep them in contact with each other and keep them excited about being part of the fraternity. This can help offer a sense of normalcy in a world that is unfortunately changing so rapidly and not in ways that we really want it to. But it also helps introduce pledges to the chapter. If you have a pledge program going on, but the chapter isn't actually doing anything, isn't having any sort of events or activities, then it's hard to show the pledges what it is they're going to be doing as active brothers.
Hey, Martha, I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do chapters have to formally revise their bylaws to reduce their requirements for the semester?
Ah, good question. A Parley Pro question. So I will give you my personal opinion. It depends on what their bylaws actually state they have to do. Their bylaws may state that they do this broad thing, but then their chapter policy delineates the more specifics, which hopefully is what they've done, because a chapter policy is much easier to amend and change. If their bylaws are restricting them to 20 hours of service or 3 fellowships or whatever it is, then they would need to look at either changing their bylaws so that some of those more specific requirements are in their chapter policy instead and can be amended more easily, or something along those lines. Do you have a specific example you're thinking of?
No, I just have a few that were, prior to the start of the semester, were in conversations with their exec about what might be required for them to reduce their requirements. So I just wanted to know the answer if the question, that specific question, were to arise.
Yeah, it would just depend on where their requirements are listed, if they're in their chapter bylaws or their policy.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
We've had chapters suspend their bylaws to accommodate the current situation. So they've kind of, they're doing it on a semester basis. It's not a permanent suspension. So it's kind of evaluating whether it's actually feasible to do it.
Oh, that's a whole parliamentary procedure debate. Oh my.
Yeah, it kind of depends on the chapter, how into Parley Pro they are. If they're very much into bylaws, rule everything, and they're already probably looking at changing them already.
Yeah.
But you guys bring up good questions. This is something that you as section chairs could help them kind of navigate. Because you may have part of the chapter going, yeah, just throw the bylaws out the window, and the other part of the chapter is saying, no, we need the bylaws. And so you need to help, maybe kind of get those two groups to come together and figure out what's best for the
it's
chapter.
not literally throwing every bylaw out the window. It's specific
but just to the requirements.
It's specific to the requirements. So it's just reevaluating those specific areas as it can be done for that semester.
Okay, so something else to think about as section chairs, and then also in talking to your students, is how can we continue to be leaders, be friends, and be of service during this pandemic? Any thoughts?
I know one thing I've been stressing to my chapters is that I'm there as a resource for them, which I know is very obvious because that's your main role as section chair. But I've really been, emphasizing to them, like, hey, here's my phone number. If anything comes up, text me whenever, send me an email. I'm here for you and I'm here to help you. And just make it very clear that, even if it's something weird, you can ask me about any little thing. I had one of my chapters ask me about sectionals conference for the fall and what that would look like, because they wanted to plan for their budget for it. And they were like, oh, sorry if this seems weird. I don't even know if we're having conference. And I just told them that it's fine. Because, this is the first time for most of us that we're going through something like this. So we're kind of all in it together and we're all figuring it out as we go. And I think just normalizing the fact that it's okay to not necessarily have the answer at the moment and to be flexible and to roll with the punches will really, with the chapters I worked with, it's really helped calm a lot of them down.
That's good. Definitely maintaining those open communication lines so that they feel like they can come to you and initiate that conversation with you.
Yeah, I did a lot of new emails after this first started, just about every week, just checking in, but trying not to say, I'm not going to tell you to wash your hands. You already heard that enough. Trying to make it light up, but also know that y'all have heard it so much, you're tired of hearing it. I just want to say, I hope you're doing okay. Just let you know I'm checking in on you. And then I stopped when the school year ended. I said, okay, don't think about APO. Y'all go away for the summer and, get yourselves together and wrap your heads around all this. We'll talk in the fall. Just try to make it more that we're all in this together, that we're, I'm here for them, like you were saying. And I don't know if it's working, but I think it has. Hopefully it has.
Yeah, I tried when all this started, I tried actually to take the opposite, almost sort of like to take a little bit more of a step back and sort of let them, because most of them weren't really doing much of anything because they didn't know what to do. And I didn't want to feel like I was pressuring them into, even though you're this pandemic is going on, you better have your meetings. And I didn't want them to feel like that. So I just sort of wanted to, I was of course available for questions, but I didn't want to put that pressure on them. And the chapters that did stuff, I continued to keep in touch with, and the chapters that weren't, I sort of said, that's okay. That's an acceptable response. Now I think it's a different story, but that's back in March.
Yeah, back in March and April, it's more of, there's just a friend saying hi. I wasn't even pushing APO or anything. It was just, let you know I'm still here.
Mm-hmm.
You need me. And I feel your pain kind of deal. Because some of my emails also went to some of the, to the advisors as well. And it was very much not trying to make sure I had every, I dotted T. There may have been typos, and it was trying to show it was human. I was feeling it too. So, brother to brother.
Good. All right, let's talk about something exciting, finances. So, why is paying national dues important? Anyone? Why do we ask the students to pay national dues? Insurance, that's a good one.
Keeps the lights on at the office.
What, Andrew, is that you?
Oop, yep, sorry, mic trouble. Yeah, keeps the lights on and the staff stay at the office.
Yep, got to pay the people at national office. Okay, so
not only that, but especially when everything went virtual last semester, quarter, whatever, I was reminding my students that all of that stuff that came out virtually, even though they weren't doing anything in person, all of that hard work, that was the staff. That's what their dues go to. It goes to the resources that they get beyond, the APO leads and all the programming and things that we provide, which didn't really matter to them at, March 20th.
Yes, Jessica said in the chat that national dues goes to pay for all the resources and programming that the fraternity offers to the students. So it's very important that the chapters continue to, help out with that. So in light of COVID, if the chapter is not meeting in person in order to take cash from the students or get a check from the students, how will the chapter collect national dues for their actives? And there are now actually a few different resources and methods available for this. There is the APO individual payment portal. Where was this 20 years ago?
Longer.
Right. And I believe this is available on the mobile app. Is that correct, Brittany?
Yes, there's a link right there on the app that's super easy to use, and then there's a quick website link that they can access off the national website as well.
Awesome. On Officer Portal, of course, if the chapter is able to collect the dues from the individual students, the chapter can then turn around on Officer Portal and make that payment to national office. They can also simply call the accounting department at national office and make that payment over the phone. Or if their account is through their school, they can mail a school check, just like they always did. But there are, newer methods available. I think that individual payment portal is awesome, and hopefully that will help collect some of those dues that maybe we haven't before. So one thing to discuss with your chapters, or if this comes up with your chapters, is if the chapter is discussing lowering their chapter dues. Have any of your chapters that you know of started discussing this or put this out there to their chapters, to their actives? Okay. And it's, it's a valid point. If your chapter normally charges $60 a semester and now 17 of that goes to nationals, and the rest is used to pay for, a cabin retreat or a fancy formal or all of these things that they're not going to be able to do this year, then do they really need to charge all of that money this year? So it's definitely a valid conversation for the chapter to have, and they may ask, for your help in navigating that conversation with the actives. But if you do lower the chapter dues, say down to just the national amount that's due, how do those lower dues then affect the chapter budget, not just for this year, but for the next year to come? Okay, looking at marketing on campus. Have the campuses in your section limited in-person marketing opportunities for fall recruitment? We're right here at the beginning of the fall semester. Chapters are getting ready to start their recruitment and their rush weeks. So, what kinds of challenges are they looking at if they're not allowed to do in-person marketing? Of course, social media accounts. Some chapters are still using Facebook. A lot are using Instagram. I don't even know what else is popular right now.
I clearly don't know what's popular given the group me discussion earlier, but one of my former chapters from F2 has been knocking it out of the park with Instagram. If I highly recommend your chapters, if they're looking for inspiration, look at Zeta Gamma. They're at the Valparaiso University in Valparaiso, Indiana, and they are rocking it. So
good. All right, so some other ways that the chapters can do some marketing, not in person, are email lists. They may get email addresses. The university student organization office may be helping disperse some of those emails for students who are perhaps interested in service organizations or students who indicated that they were involved in scouting in high school. Depending on the university, they might actually help produce these kinds of email lists. But also have your chapters go back and make sure that maybe people who have started the pledging process or were interested in the past and were not able to complete the pledging process at that time, this might be the perfect opportunity for them to finally go through the pledging process and become initiated as a brother. So go back to some older contacts that they may still have. Let's see. Is there something?
Kind of moving back real quick on the other opportunities for marketing. I know some campuses are doing like virtual student group sessions and stuff, but to kind of like their fairs that they would usually have to promote all the groups. So taking advantage of those opportunities, and if there's a way to, and if the school is not doing that but open to other organizations doing them on their own, figuring out a way on how to promote that so that incoming classes are doing that. And I think that's critical depending on how some of these schools are formatted in terms of their presence on campus, because in some cases they have like very, very limited upperclassmen on campus and the entire freshman class there. So it's almost like the freshmen are kind of interacting with hardly anyone besides their own group. So it's hard to, when you're all first years, you can't exactly figure out what is great to get involved with if you don't know the lay of the land that well just yet.
Jackie, I want to build on that one a little bit. I actually have a school in my section that decided that they were going to get in contact with Student Life and actually discovered that the class of 2024 had a Discord account. So they decided that they were going to take their virtual fair and bring it over to Discord in order to talk to the freshmen. I don't know if anyone else has got similar resources to that.
That's a good idea. Thank you. Okay, so those are some different, different resources and social media venues that you can suggest to your chapters. Also working with Housing and Residence Life. Maybe they're not allowed to go into the residence halls to put up flyers individually, but maybe they're allowed to give one to, the resident directors or to the housing office, and they're willing to do something with it. I don't know if any of the residents organizations, if they still have, the campus TV channel, if there's something you can do with that to do marketing, posting on campus e-boards, posting flyers if you're still able to. But trying to help the students be creative with ways to do recruitment. Let's see. Oh, okay. And for people who don't know, thank you, John. Discord is a gaming social media app. It has voice and text chat. Thank you, John and Russell, because I had no idea. All right, and one thing to try to work with the chapters on is maintaining engagement amongst their actives, their associate members who are already in a position where they're not doing as much with the chapter so far anyway, but making sure that they stay engaged, and then also the alumni. Maybe the chapter can't do their big special alumni event that they usually do in person every year, but try to help them brainstorm something else that they can do to keep the alumni engaged. Oh, there's more help about Discord. It's an online communication server. You can create channels for specific topics and find similar interests or groups to join. You can also create different channels on Discord, so there could be a separate channel for executive boards or pledges. Thank you, guys.
May I chime in here?
Sure.
I work with the ASU Angelo State campus here in San Angelo, Texas. They were not allowing students to hand out papers or physical items at the student organization fair. So it was actually suggested that they create QR codes, because you can just go online, Google it, and you can create your own QR code for free. And they can just have their phone camera hover over it, and it recognizes the code for you, and then it will bring up a website. So you can use that to help them get invitations to online meetings, or like an online flyer, for example, to tell them more about what APO is. And so that way it eliminates that hands contact.
That's an excellent idea. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit about recruitment and pledge programs for fall 2020, because it's going to look different, just a little bit. So in working with chapters, have any of your chapters mentioned that they might just not do a pledge program or a pledge class this semester?
I have one that's like that.
Okay. All right, well, as section chair, some things you can do. Obviously, you don't want to just shake your finger and say, you must have a pledge class. You do want to, keep it open for discussion. So a good idea is just to set up a meeting with the chapter president, with maybe the whole e-board, have the advisory chair present, and set up a meeting and discuss the health of the chapter and its future outlook. And then also talk about the importance of having a pledge class and active recruitment for chapter longevity and retention. If the chapter this year is predominantly seniors, is this a good time for the chapter to not have a pledge class this year, or at least this fall? So what are some different things that they can try to have a pledge class, have it be successful, have these students initiate and carry on with that chapter history and have that chapter longevity and retention for the years to come. And then of course, just keeping those open lines of communication, being encouraging, and helping the chapters be flexible, creative, and understanding. Okay, Andrew says, we have a lot of chapters on quarter system, and they're mostly postponing to winter. Is anyone else in that situation?
One of the chapters that I advised didn't do a pledge class in their spring quarter because of everything going on, but I actually haven't talked to them about their plans for fall. I should do that.
This is a good time to do that.
Yeah.
I had a couple chapters that also, for different reasons, did not have a pledge class during the spring semester. So while it's not fun to think about it in a virtual environment to figure out a pledge program, they are still open to figuring out how to proceed. And if it yields no results, then it yields no results, and they can figure that out from there. But they don't want to just call it a wash right from the beginning, which I think is at least a good start and optimistic of them to kind of be on that page, be like, we're not sure if we'll get anyone, but we're still going to try. It's like, that's good. Go with that.
Yeah,
good place.
The chapters
ahead,
I've
Doug.
spoken with so far have definitely been interested in trying to do a pledge program. But I've also been encouraging them, because if they don't, always have something as a backup in case you don't get the pledges because of this unique semester. So try to maybe revise the pledge program or do other back burner types of projects, since you're not going to have the pledge program itself. So that's something you may want to consider for the chapters who either want to do a pledge program but can't find any pledges, or have just decided, you know what, we're just going to sit this semester out.
Good. Okay. Here's more chat. Yes. So for some schools, I've heard a couple of you guys mention that, this past spring, some of the schools decided not to have a pledge class. So hopefully they can have them this fall. And for those students that they were planning to have go through in the spring, if they're still students at the university, then they can go through in the fall. And we'll talk about some different options that the chapters have for pledge program operations here in a second. So if you have chapters that are discussing whether or not they want to organize a pledge class this semester and do a pledging program, these are some things that you can discuss with them as far as the importance of having a pledge class that might encourage them to at least try it. Like we said, it may not be fruitful, but they'll have the experience, and at the same time, it's something that they're all doing together as a chapter. So some of the things that are really important about having a pledge class is a pledge class can help recover any past or anticipated membership decreases. So for those schools that did not have a pledge class in the spring, it might be a good idea for them to have one in the fall, at least try to to try to recoup some of those membership decreases that they had, where they didn't have a pledge program in the spring, and then maybe they had a lot of people graduate or not come back to campus this fall. A pledge class brings in new voices, perspectives, and leadership styles. As the years go on, the chapters change, and I have to say, being a chapter advisor, I've been with my current chapter for almost 10 years, and getting to see how each pledge class comes in and they change the chapter, and it's most of the time it's a wonderful thing to see. And when you don't have those pledge classes, you don't have those voices coming in and helping the chapter evolve. Having a pledge class helps avoid leaving the chapter with a lack of history, experience, and/or training. So let's say you have a chapter of mostly juniors and seniors this year, and they decide not to do a pledge class in the fall, and maybe in the spring they only get a couple of brothers, but then they have 12 graduate. What's going to happen to the chapter? Will they have the training? Will they have the experience to have enough people to serve on their exec board? Will they have enough people to carry on the traditions of the chapter, or even to have that experience and that knowledge to create their own new traditions? Having pledges, obviously it just offers the pledges an opportunity on campus for support and friendship. And one thing that I've been thinking about with APO recruitment this fall specifically is the first year freshmen going into college this fall. What has the last 6 months looked like for them? So they're already in a position where they didn't have the experiences that they thought they were going to have their last semester in high school. They may not have had much of a graduation ceremony, or at least not in person. They may not have had prom. They may not have had their last spring break trip with their friends. They may not have been able to see their friends very much. And then they're going to college and everything's still virtual and they're still not getting to really meet people per se, but they still need that support and they still need that opportunity for friendship. And that is something that Alpha Phi Omega can provide. Also, Pledge Class offers the active brothers an opportunity to mentor a group of new members. I remember that being fun as an active brother, especially once you got into your upperclassmen years. You know, seeing the newer, younger pledges come through and being able to kind of mentor them and teach them the ways of the chapter. And so if you don't have a pledge class, then the current brothers don't get to have that opportunity. And then also a pledge class, having a successful pledge class ensures a healthy future for the chapter post-COVID-19 or any other emergency situation that you might be dealing with. Okay, whoopsie, there we go. Let's talk about virtual recruitment. So one thing over on the right in that little blue bubble, this is something that is, I believe, coming down the pipeline very soon, and I believe it'll be available on the mobile app, but it is the Virtual Recruitment Toolkit, and it will include a lot of different resources and assistance for chapters to help build their recruitment programs within their chapters. So tips on modifying recruitment to support chapter health, a modified recruitment plan and calendar examples, digital marketing training and branded templates. Those are always good to use. And digital conversation starters for recruitment. So if you have chapters that are struggling and trying to figure out how in the world do we even go about this virtually, this is something that could really help them. And then find out what is available through each university that you work with. Do they offer some kind of virtual student organization fair or engagement fair? And if so, then how do the students exchange contact? How do the students know which potential rushees are available to work with Alpha Phi Omega? How do the universities suggest that new connections are made? How do they suggest that new students make connections with student organizations and other students on campus? And then also the student activities resources, again, having the students talk to their student affairs office, their student organizations office, whatever resources they have on campus, encouraging them to seek those out and find out what is available just through the university. So some things we've already talked about, the different social media platforms, flyers if they're allowed on campus, email lists, etc. So I put bring a friend in quotation marks because this is how at least half of the people I know in Alpha Phi Omega came to Alpha Phi Omega, is a friend brought them to the meeting or recruitment info meeting or whatever it was. And that's still important. Even if you're not physically bringing the friend with you to an in-person meeting, maybe if it's a friend that you have included in your social circle, that maybe they're with you when you do your virtual meetings, or you make sure that they're invited to the virtual spaces that you're using. So something else to think about and help the chapters with is how can APO chapters set themselves apart from other student organizations? And what I mean by this is, how do your chapters get the word out that they're not just another virtual meeting? If the students are, sitting in the virtual space all day at class, if every single other organization and everything else they're involved in right now is being done virtually, how can APO chapters set themselves apart as not just another virtual meeting? Any ideas on that? What makes APO special?
This doesn't answer that question, but I think making sure that they're prepared, they're organized, and they have the resources to create recruitment tools that are going to be nice looking or professional looking is going to help them stand out from some other organizations that don't have the resources from the national office that we have.
I think it's also about helping students think about the mentality that they're approaching recruitment and helping them to start with the why of the organization rather than the what, so instead of just being another organization that does service or another organization that meets virtually during this, really having the chapter consider what the mission and the vision of the organization and of their chapter is, so that when they talk to potential new members, they're relaying that. I mean, this is a great tip for recruitment, even outside of this context, but I think especially now, emphasizing the why of kind of what it means to be a part of the organization rather than just kind of what they do, because the what they do is going to change, especially with this new context, but the why is going to remain the same.
I think also, just while this time seems difficult to recruit because of the distance, the brotherhood and fellowship of having APO on your campus and trying to promote that is also just a way for people to engage with someone else. Because as much as you could just be going to class, you're not interacting with people the same way you're going to class. And while there are going to be like actual administrative things to discuss at some of these brotherhood meetings and chapter meetings, there is still that fellowship aspect of just checking in, doing something fun with this group, even if it is virtually, figuring out service opportunities virtually, or if you're comfortable going out, being able to do something out as well. So I think it's also kind of emphasizing that aspect as well, that it's not just another meeting. We're not going to just sit here and spew information at you that you may or may not retain, but we want to actually make sure you're doing okay and engage with you so you get a true feeling of what it is that APO is doing.
Good. I just foresee this, being a little bit of an issue this coming year is, why do we want to go to another virtual meeting? So I think just having, some of these thoughts and these ideas in place, so that when the chapter presidents or the rush chair people or whoever come to you and say, how do we get people to show up when it's, just another virtual meeting? I think some of these ideas are really good to help just to help encourage the chapters to work on recruitment. Okay, talking a little bit about virtual pledge educating. Pledge educator training. So one thing that the pledge educators are going to have to adapt to a little bit is learning how to adapt the pledge education experience to meet the students where they live and learn, which for a lot of students right now is their home, whether it's on campus or off campus. So how do you do that pledge education when you're not actually in the room with them? And there are now a couple of different options available. There is now the Intro to APO course on demand, which follows along with the new pledge manual that came out this past year. It is an independent and self-paced course that the students can do. And I believe there are some chapters that actually did it this past spring. Do any of you guys have any chapters that you know of that have utilized this already? Okay. I didn't know if anybody had any experience with it, but that is an option. So, if the pledge educator is kind of struggling on what to do, that is an option for them. Or if you have smaller chapters and you have a pledge educator who might be doing double or triple duty as other officer positions, this might be an option for them as well. And then, of course, for those pledge educators that want to do it, you can have the live pledge meetings virtually using Zoom, Google Hangouts, Skype, some of those venues that we talked about earlier. And then in looking at ceremonies for pledge ceremony and initiation, there are virtual ceremony supplements available in Officer Portal and on the national website. Okay. We're going to talk about retention, and then we'll be done. You guys are doing great. Okay. In looking at retention, how is the chapter keeping actives and associates engaged? Jackie, I think you kind of touched on this a few minutes ago about, how to keep these brothers engaged in another virtual meeting. Have any of your chapters talked about ideas on how they want to maybe change up the meetings or something different they want to try, or how they want to approach this virtually?
I'm not sure. I think now is also a matter of trying to have that discussion to figure it out, particularly with trying to recruit new members that have never met others in person. At least in the spring semester, most of the pledge programs were already underway, if not almost finished. So people had already known each other. This was basically a touch point so they could still engage and see other people that weren't in their household. But I think that is something that they'll need to kind of further look into. So I don't have any particular ideas or know of anything right this second to share.
I have a chapter who's actually been really excited about this. They've jumped on this and got really creative and innovative. And so they've had a lot of, I think, ideas. One of them was about having a YouTube channel, and different people would post videos or make videos, and the president was like, we're going to dress up like Tiger King and we're going to do a whole segment on Tiger King. So I think, some of what some chapters are thinking about, at least in my area, have been kind of really thinking outside the box and thinking especially about what's unique to virtual. So what can you do in this setting that you couldn't do before, and using that as an opportunity to not think, well, how do we just take what we were already doing and make it fit this virtual setting, but what can we do that's different?
And I think someone had mentioned it previously, but really kind of encouraging the inter-chapter relations with other chapters that you normally, even if you would normally schedule something, obviously schedules get messed up and you're not always able to do it. Now it's just a matter of, can we find an appropriate time that we can be at our computers for an hour or two just to do some sort of fellowship real quick. There's a lot less logistics involved with it, and you can get more people that are able to attend, so it's not just for some a pledge requirement that they're just meeting pledges or just a small number of people.
Yeah, that's really a good idea, Jackie. Actually, that bubble kind of in the middle. Can the chapter serve its campus in a more accommodating and flexible capacity in a virtual setting? So I kind of see this as asking, can chapters use this time to their advantage? Can there be a silver lining with this? Are inter-chapter events now a little more plausible for chapters that maybe they can't drive 4 hours away on a weekend, and so they've never done an inter-chapter event before, but now since we're doing everything virtually anyway, this is a good opportunity for them to do some of those things.
Whether the chapter is 7 hours away or just an hour across the road.
Mm-hmm.
This also goes back to recruitment, but one of the things that I was looking at was when you have, excuse me, when you have one of these chapters that's trying to compete for all the attention of the undergraduates as well, there are going to be some clubs on campus that normally would pick up many of the incoming freshman class that are just going to be completely shut out of operations because they can't meet. So I was also encouraging my chapters to look at it and say, hey, you have a bigger slice of the pie that you can go after because the students aren't going to be distributed among all the other clubs as well.
It's a good
point.
Also,
yeah. And also just thinking about, obviously we've talked about the different virtual resources that have been created to accommodate this time. And like a lot of organizations on campuses don't have that wealth of knowledge where they have an alumni base that is actively willing to help them to make sure they stay active. And also just the resources that we're providing them to make time work for them. So that's just something to add to their advantage in terms of giving people an opportunity, giving them a recruitment opportunity, because they could very well be one of few organizations that'll be seeking members at this time while they're in this space, because other organizations can't do much.
Yeah, for anybody who hasn't seen it in the chat yet, Andrew suggested one of my chapters is going to use their snack budget to send everyone a small coupon for Grubhub and then do a virtual banquet together. That is fabulous. I love it. Let's see, I think there was one above that. Oh, let's see. Andrea said that last quarter, one of her chapters included some sort of silly fellowship or icebreaker activity into each meeting, like having a scavenger hunt or trivia or something. So actually the chapter I advised last night was their first chapter meeting, and they've decided to institute a new segment at the end of their virtual meetings called Teach a Brother. And so every brother can sign up for something that they want to teach everyone else. So last night we learned how to make origami hearts. So something a little different, keep everybody engaged and keep them interested until the end when they can have an opportunity to learn something new. All right. So something else to think about as we go into this semester, with a lot of our chapters having virtual meetings, how can we help our members avoid virtual meeting fatigue in APO? So like we said earlier, if these students are already doing either some, most, or all of their classes virtually, if they're doing all of their other meetings virtually, some of them may even be working virtually, how do we help them avoid virtual meeting fatigue?
You make sure the meeting is on time and it stays within the time frame that it's set up for. You don't waste their time.
Okay.
There's a reason for the meeting. If there's if you ever taken serve, it's part of that. If there's not a reason for the meeting, then don't have a meeting just to be having a meeting.
If it could have been an email.
That's right. It could be an email, send an email. Yep. Or group me or whatever.
Okay. I actually looked at this a couple weeks ago, and if you put in a Google search virtual meeting fatigue, there are a lot of articles about how to help avoid that or decrease it. And one, it said talking about just the visual stimulation that you get from looking at a screen all day. So maybe having people, if your meetings are early enough in the evenings or early enough in the afternoon, have everybody go outside and do their virtual meeting. So even, yes, they're looking at the screen, but they're at least outside getting some fresh air, that could help. Or having people do a common theme for their background. If you're using Zoom and you know you can change your background, having everybody either do the same background or do a similar background, or even have a theme. Like you could tell everybody, okay, this week, everybody do a beach theme for your background, and everybody does something, you know, kind of beachy. And so it's something meeting, but then it's also less visually jarring because everybody's is similar in background. So there are a lot of different ideas. And Laura raised a hand. Yes, Laura?
Sorry, I didn't mean to do that.
Okay.
Let's take that away.
All right, we have a couple suggestions in the chat. Grace said, one of my chapters is going to attempt hybrid meetings that will be both online and in person at the same time, and the in-person group will rotate based on interest or capacity of the room that they can book. That is a good idea. So again, if your chapter is 50 people strong and you can only have 25 in a particular meeting room at any given time, 25 meet in the room, 25 do it virtually, and then next week they rotate around based on, like you said, you know, some kind of common interest or you know, some kind of, I don't know, interesting way that you want to throw the students together. So these are just some suggestions that you can make to the chapters. All right, and now our final question. How can we as sectional chairs help facilitate chapter retention during this time? Anyone?
I'll say something because,
yeah,
you know, that doesn't take much. I think a lot of the students are getting kind of overwhelmed and stuck in like, and they always get stuck in but this is how we've always done it, so this is the only way to do it. And that's one of the things we bring to the table, is being able to be a step back and say, what about these other ideas? And help them widen their blinders and see how something could work differently but still be effective.
Absolutely.
Just to build on that, one of the things I'm doing right now at work is I am taking a virtual course about that, which involves innovation and the idea of saying, how do you create that environment to say, get people to innovate, get people to think of ways to do things in a totally unique way. And a lot of that really comes down to the idea of making sure all this training that we have available gets out there, and making sure that you have the environment to say, hey, there are many different ways of doing it. Use your brain, and here are all the resources to go and pick something different.
Good.
And I think for us, the other thing we can do is, you know, just like keep the officers of the chapters in touch with each other if they're not already, you know, doing so, you know, to go off of that innovation thing. You know, they can generate tons of ideas off of each other, because, you know, a lot of them have ideas of like events to hold and things to do, which are maybe, you know, keeping people excited and interested. So as the section chair, you know, can help kind of keep in touch with each other.
Yeah, definitely. Section chairs can help serve as kind of that liaison between chapters and helping them find those resources. All right, any other thoughts?
I threw this in the chat, but I can say it out loud too. I think also just making sure that they know that we just want them to try and do as best they can with the current situation. That, you know, as long as we know that they're trying to keep their chapter running or be innovative, that if their pledge class doesn't get the same numbers, or they have to adapt their requirements slightly, that's okay. We want them to be successful, and we want them to figure out how they can be successful.
Absolutely. All right, does anybody have any questions? I know we probably went a little longer than we planned to, but I really appreciate all of the discussion and the questions and the suggestions. This was a good lively group, so I appreciate that.
Good facilitator.
Oh, thank you. Well, my email address is there. Yes, I still use Hotmail. And if you need to get a hold of Eden, of course, for any reason, our volunteer development program chair, her contact information is there as well. But do feel free to email me if you have any questions, concerns. If you come across something this fall and you want to ask, if I have any suggestions for, I'd be happy to help. But other than that, I appreciate everybody joining me tonight and for participating so well this past hour and 45 minutes. Thank you. But I wish everybody luck this fall in moving forward into this kind of new realm that we find ourselves in with all of the challenges and opportunities that it's going to provide. And I hope you feel a little better prepared.
Thank you. Martha, is your
Yes.
PowerPoint going to be available as well, or just the video?
Brittany?
We could make the PowerPoints available to everybody. I know that the recordings will be up on the national website, and we can pull the registration list from tonight and from all the other sessions, and we'll make sure we email out copies too.
I think that'd be a good
That'd
help,
be really
especially,
good.
yeah. It'd be very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you all for joining, and thank you, Martha, so much for facilitating tonight.
Yep.
You're welcome. I had fun.
Good info. Thank you, everyone.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you, Martha.
Thank you, guys.
Martha.